Today, I want to talk about world building, and this will be in parts. So, this is part one. Some of the very first things you have to think about when you're creating a world. And these are important decisions because they can drastically affect how your world works. So, one of the very first things is how like or unlike Earth. Now, I'm assuming most everybody listening to me is human, which means this is the only planet we've ever lived on. That drives a lot of our assumptions on how we create a world. So, one of the first things you have to decide is how like it is it? Is it going to be bigger? Is it going to be smaller? Is it going to have the same amount of land and water? And these are things that can make a difference because let's say you're mimicking after Dune with Arrakis. Well, there's no seas. So it's all sand and hard rocks, which changes what sort of creatures can be there. So literally, it's one of the very first decisions if you're creating something brand new. Now, the second part, and it's one that we don't always think about, is the common things that we take for granted. Days of the week. Not only how many days are there, but what are they called? Do they tell time by months and years? Do they tell time by weeks? How long is a month? How long is a year? And these things will make a difference because let's say a year for them is 2,000 days. Well, that makes a huge difference if you're dealing with somebody with a human-like lifespan and saying they're only a year old. Well, a year old is then the equivalent of almost five, actually 6 or 7 for us. So you have to take this stuff into consideration. The other problem is how do they tell time? And I know that sounds super obvious, but minutes and seconds and hours are a creation of humans. In one of the fantasy series that I wrote, I had them tell time by fingers. And what I mean is if you hold your hand up between the horizon and the sun, each finger is roughly about 15 minutes. So that's how they told time, was how many fingers of time it would take for the sun to travel. It's both kind of obvious, but yet at the same time, if you think about, well, it's going to take me a finger to get this done or 2 fingers. So that's how they decided, because most people's hand width is roughly the same. And time didn't become a major thing until really the industrial era. So we've established how big or small your planet is. How are you going to tell time? And this does make a difference when you're trying to write a story and you say, hey, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Well, is that the right phrase? Okay, next thing is technology. And technology is huge because for most of us, you have 3 options. You have advanced technology, in which case you're usually writing some sort of science fiction. Well, how advanced are you making it? Are we talking Star Trek, where there's transporters and ships that can travel faster than light speed? Or are we talking Blade Runner, where you've got AIs and cyborgs and stuff, but we haven't quite figured out how to reach into other worlds? Or are you talking current? This is one of the reasons that things like urban fantasy or contemporary romance, thrillers are so easy to write because you don't have to explain what a car is, what a cell phone is, how long an hour is, what I'm talking about with satellites, because our technology and understanding is exactly the same. Then, are you writing something with past technology? Now, just because I'm saying past technology, I'm not saying it has to exactly mimic Earth. I mean, that's kind of what steampunk is all about, is that it's a variation. But especially if you're writing some either type of fantasy or science fiction on another planet, this sort of technology makes a huge difference. So, are we talking Bronze Age? Are we talking Iron Age? Are we talking industrial? Where are they in their ability to do things? Because if you're talking Bronze Age, well, the only way you're going to get from point A to point B is either walking, riding an animal, slash being pulled in a cart, or a ship, which means travel takes days, weeks, even months. Things that you and I can do in a car in an hour is going to be multiple days of travel. if not weeks, depending on where you're going and how difficult the roads are. If you move it up to industrial age, okay, is it an exact match to us? Or did they maybe go a different direction instead of using oil the way our Earth went through? Did they go to steam, which is steampunk? Are they using solar? Are they using wind? Because as you get closer to our current technology, there's a lot of other options as to how you can go. And we're not even including whether or not there's magic, which can change everything. If you have a technology that's run by magic, you get to mix and match all of this. Because if you have magic, you can then have silk robes and flowing gowns and indoor plumbing without having developed metal. So this is all stuff that you have to think about. And it gets really complicated because little tiny things can trip you up and throw off your world if you haven't planned about this. Okay, next part, beings. What sort of beings are there? Are you doing humans? If so, you're good because you don't have to describe a human to anybody reading your book on this planet. And if you get people reading your book on other planets, please let me know because I want to get into that market. But then you go, okay, are you doing mythological creatures such as elves, dwarves, gremlins? Are you doing kitsune? What are you writing that isn't human? And is it something that already exists? And the reason I say this is you can obviously take an elf and twist them whichever way you want. But by using the word elf, everybody's going to have an immediate image in their head as to what an elf is. Pointy ears, very pretty, usually willowy, dwarf, short, stout, lots of hair, likes to mine. You have these built-in conceptions of what a dwarf, an elf, a centaur is. And this can be good or bad depending on the world you're trying to create. And then what if you want to create something completely new? Well, completely new is fine. You are 100%. In fact, I encourage it. But then you've got a lot more decisions to make. Okay, so you have this completely new being. How many legs? How many arms? How many heads? How many eyes? How does it eat? How does it breathe? What does it breathe? How does it talk? And talking's a huge thing. I quite often have intelligent animals in my books. Well, animals, though they can make sounds, their tongue and palate and vocal cords are not set up to be able to mimic the sounds that we make. So, sure, you can get the occasional cat or dog to make a sound that sounds a lot like one of our words, but the ability, see, look at how my mouth is moving. The ability to do this is how we create words, how the sound is manipulated into what we're expecting. How are they going to talk? And it is a big thing, especially if you're saying, well, the alien has no mouth. Okay, great, that's fine. How does it talk? Eating's relatively easy. They can absorb through the skin. So are we doing telepathy? Are we doing sign language? I saw one really good book that I can't remember the title of right now. They did all of their communication through colors flashing on their skin. There are other ways than talking, but you have to think about this. And then you have to get into, even though it may not be the point of your story, how do they reproduce? And it's something you should at least know, even if it isn't necessarily important to your story. Do they give birth? Do they lay eggs? Do they divide? Do they cut off parts of them that then grow? All of these are questions. And then you have animals. I don't know that it's actually possible, unless you're maybe a gaseous alien, to exist without some other form of life on a planet. Okay, are you doing new ones? Are you creating them? Because all of these questions exist. And one of the things you need to remember is if you're writing a true fantasy or a alien adventure, if everything you have is exactly the same as Earth animals, then it doesn't feel like you're reading a story about someplace else. So that's something you need to remember. Okay, that was part one. tomorrow or the next day, I will have part two up and we will go into more things that you need to remember when you're creating a brand new world. See you later.